Meg Griffin, the black sheep of the Griffin family. It wasn't always this way. I'd like to think that it was a subtle character development over time, from season 1 to the current season we're at, number 22. But I want to get one thing out of the way first, which is the voice of Meg. It has changed from season 1 to season 22. Lacey Chabert, as most of you know, was originally the voice of Meg. She did a pretty nice job of giving Meg this typical archetype of a teenage girl type voice, just snooty, prepubescent kind of character. While it wasn't the most distinct and unique kind of voice, it did the job for the kind of character they were trying to portray Meg as. After Lacey Chabert left, Mila Kunis was the one that took over for Meg. And to me, while it is just Mila Kunis doing a Mila Kunis impression, she nails the job, and she absolutely gives Meg this identity. I don't think there's anybody else who could fit the role properly, and it helps her stand out. Getting that out of the way, let's start with season 1. Season 1 Meg. I'd actually say that this applies to seasons 2 and 3 Meg as well, where pre-cancellation, she was just this typical teenage girl archetyped. Very angsty, self-loathing, desperate, trying to fit in with the cool crowd. It's very evident in the fact she tried to join a cult not really knowing what it was all about, trying to act lesbian while not being lesbian, and growing this unhealthy attachment to people she's interested in romantically. There are these subtle psychotic traits that she starts to develop in the early seasons that kind of go into modern Family Guy, but nothing too crazy that you wouldn't see outside of, typical teenagers in general. But when it comes to the family dynamic, they're very loving is a funny word to use, but if anybody has watched Modern Family Guy, you know that they beat the literal shit out of her every single chance they get. They're very supportive, almost like a family unit trying to get along and make it work. Peter's almost as supportive as he can be while trying to understand his kids in general and trying to raise his family. Lois tries to be as supportive as she can as well. It's just a very loving dynamic, no malicious intent behind it, nothing to where you would think that this family would make their daughter the absolute butt of the joke that she is in the modern age of Family Guy. What about modern age Family Guy? We go into season 22, where we pretty much are at this evolution in Meg's character that I personally think is awesome. I didn't mention before, but season 1 Meg is so boring. There is nothing about her that is layered, or there's no wrinkles in her character. She's very one-dimensional. I like where they're going with her now, because pretty much when they got revived for season 4, you can notice that they kind of stopped giving a fuck with the writing. While it's still funny and there are these great stories, I mean, in the writing of the characters, Meg especially, she's still a typical teenage girl, but instead of these subtle little jabs and comments, they're physical jabs and literally beating the shit out of her. And pretty much the intensity ramps up season by season to the point where we get into the last
10 years or so.
A Family Guy where she's not taking any more shit. She's fought back. She makes comments of her own, acknowledging her loser status, just leaning into the fact that she's an outcast and a rebellious one at that. And to be honest with you, I fuck with this version of Meg. I love it completely. She's become this self-aware, psychotic being that just does whatever the fuck she wants, being completely independent from the family. Season 22 in itself is just this new wrinkle and this new layer of Meg's character. In the first episode, Fertilized Meg, she becomes a mother. Well, she's a surrogate for Jeff and Bruce, but when Jeff and Bruce feel like they're not ready, before reconsidering, Meg feels attached to her daughter, and she gains these motherly instincts and would do anything. And there's another wrinkle right there. And in Snapple Decision, where her and Lois win money to go on a vacation, she bonds with her mother, where in the pretty much post-revival seasons, she kind of just has this terrible relationship with Lois. But here, she's working with Lois and tying her back to the family and potentially setting up future dynamics and episodes and plot lines. And, well, I don't really want to talk about Lifeguard Meg, but it's a little odd, and I guess her and Peter have a story. You can see that her character is growing a backbone and finally feeling confident in breaking out of the archetyped. While sure, she's constantly still evolving in her character like most others. In conclusion, we go from season 1 Meg, boring, one-dimensional, nothing going for her in terms of character development, to the season 22 Meg that subtly, season by season by season, and even not so subtly, has become her own independent character apart from the family, pretty much having these storylines of her own that add wrinkles and layers to her character. I'm very excited to see where Meg's character goes next. There might be a change in the writing staff because Meg is being written more as this independent woman kind of character. There's a possibility that these writers are younger and can sympathize with Meg and wanting to see her succeed, but I think they're going in the absolute right direction. And this has been
Pancho presenta.